I have a statement that is attributed to Antifa and a self-described person who doesn't give a name, but who says that he or she has been managing a Facebook page called Antifa since 2017. And I believe this is credible. It was forwarded to me by one of my local Facebook friends, Mike Wolpert. So let's assume that it is genuine. It's addressed to all media. Public statement from Antifa in response to the threats issued by United States President Donald J. Trump. Dear Mr. Trump, let us be clear. Antifa isn't an organization. There's no membership, no meetings, no dues, no rules, no leaders, no structure. It is literally an idea and nothing more. Even the claim of this author, the person whose voice I'm reading, to represent Antifa is one made unilaterally for the purposes of this communication and nothing more. There is no governing body nor trademark owner to dispute the author's right to represent Antifa. Antifa is a neologism constructed from a contraction of the phrase anti-fascist. The truth is, there's no such thing as being anti-fascist. Either you are a decent human being with a conscience, or you are a fascist. The ostensible President of the United States has today openly declared that he is a fascist and that he intends to turn the military power of the United States into a fascist tool. Now there is no question, and we can stop pretending that this man represents anything but the worst in humanity, which his supporters embody. It will likely be no problem for LEO, that's law enforcement organizations, to identify the author of this document, who has also maintained the Antifa page on Facebook since founding it in 2017. The author is unconcerned with that inevitability because neither the author nor this document has been involved in a crime of any sort in any way. But since both the, quote, president and the media insist on acting as though Antifa is this big, scary organization, the author supposes it's time for Antifa to make a statement. Thus, Antifa supports and defends the right of all people to live free from oppressive abuse of power, whether that power is unjustly derived from wealth, status as an employer, or political popularity. Particularly, Antifa defends and supports the right of oppressed and marginalized people to protest, march, and engage in civil disobedience in pursuit of justice. While it is never our intent to engage in violent or destructive behavior, we cannot and will not take responsibility for telling people how they are allowed to be righteously outraged. We prefer and encourage nonviolent action. We also understand that some people just aren't feeling that nice anymore. Their feelings are entirely justified, and it is neither our role nor our privilege to tell them otherwise. Mass civil disobedience is what happens when people say they're hurting, and whoever's hurting them refuses to stop. Stop hurting them. Fix your broken systems. Get real and meaningful psychological evaluations and background checks. Police in some nations have to pass a more stringent test to carry pepper spray than any police department in the U.S. or the U.S. military have in place. As a direct and possibly deliberate consequence, our military and paramilitary personnel simply cannot be assumed to be fighting in the interests of the people of this country. We've all seen the photos. This destruction and burning and looting is largely the behavior of outsiders. White people taking advantage of the situation both to enrich themselves by looting under cover of the protests and to provide excuses for uncontrolled fascist elements within our military and police forces as plausible cover for killing more black, brown, and poor people without fear of sanction. The so-called accelerationists who have committed to ensuring that anytime a marginalized community stands up and demands justice, construct a narrative of criminality and destruction that white bigots and affluent oligarchs who benefit from our broken system to validate their bigotry and injustice retroactively. They are successful in this for two reasons: because people like you are easily manipulated in your banal, self-serving ignorance, and because people like you are more than happy to passive-aggressively reap the benefits of pretending to believe this destruction is the act of the oppressed. And I just want to remind you I'm reading verbatim this post addressed to all media from a person claiming to speak for Antifa. I continue. This game has gone on for decades in an endless loop since the very dawn of the civil rights era. We the people are saying no more. And that, President Trump, is your solution. No more. Get the dirt out of your law enforcement and your military. Get the dirt out of your government and administration. Ideally, resign now and take your VP and cabinet with you. Nancy Pelosi isn't a great deal of improvement. She'll only be president for a few months. You can't arrest 100 million of us, sir, and you would be well advised not to try. If you think that targeting and making an example of the author of this document will get you anywhere, you may rest assured that this author is more than prepared to allow his real name to be used as a rallying cry for justice and civil disobedience from coast to coast. It's time for you and everyone who thinks like you to understand that whether black, red, brown, white, or any other color, Americans are done living in a nation of empty platitudes and broken promises. And then he lists a series of demands. Universal single-payer health care without regard for citizenship status, universal basic income with a federal job guarantee making the government the employer of last resort, abolition of right-to-work laws, publicly funded higher education, robust and effective social welfare programs including child care, education, employment, training, counseling, parenting skills training, life skills training including fiscal education, a requirement that functional proficiency in media, political, and economic literacy be demonstrated to graduate high school, the creation of a publicly funded nonpartisan media source to serve as the primary source of government information, federal charges of treason filed against anyone willfully and knowingly attempting to minimize public perception of the impact and risks of the coronavirus, reform of whistleblower laws, okay, so that's the end of the list of demands. It's a pretty interesting menu, I have to say. And here's the closer. In the end, Mr. Quote President, the simple reality is that Antifa isn't a thing. You can't end it, you can't arrest it, and you can't silence it, nor in any decent nation would the attempt even be made. Antifa means anti-fascism. The only position that opposes that is fascism. In the end, there is no organization that you can declare terrorists. You, sir, and yours are the terrorists, and your victims are done putting up with it. So that's a pretty powerful statement. And again, because of the clandestine nature of this loosely organized, you can't even call them a group. They are, like-minded individuals, I guess is the best way to describe them. And I think it speaks volumes. And while I do believe that there are some people who call themselves Antifa, who have been on the streets of America in the past week, I also believe that there are black bloc anarchists, there are opportunistic looters who are not making a political statement, and there's a whole range of right-wing, pro-gun, pro-Trump provocateurs, including some who could be on the government payroll. That's happened in the past, and we can't exclude it from the present day. And this creates a very complex situation to deal with.